Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. Let's see if I can find a spot a little bit out of the sun here. I'm standing in the front yard of my Portland, Oregon permaculture garden here in Zone 8B. Actually just got home from the park with my kids, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about zones in permaculture. Why are they important, and what can they help us do in terms of utilization and efficiency in our gardens? So the reason I'm in my front yard, right out my front door here, is because I want to talk about specifically Zone 1. So I've talked about zones extensively in the past, and you can check out some of those videos. But let me really briefly here say that Zone 0 is your house. And then you move out in these circles, starting with Zone 1 through Zone 5. And the way that these zones are kind of organized is in terms of frequency of use. So Zone 0, your home, you're obviously using all the time, right? You live in it. Zone 1 is right out your front door, your back door, and it is a zone of the garden that you are visiting several times a day, most likely. You are using that area of your garden really frequently. Zone 2, you're visiting at least once a day. You're using it, but not quite as often. Zone 3, a little bit further out, this is often where people put things like beehives or maybe their chicken coop. You might visit it once or twice a day, and it has perhaps, like your orchard or elements of your garden that you don't use quite as often. Zone 4 has even less interaction from us. It has less of the hand of the gardener and more wildness. So another way to think of these zones is not only zones of frequency of use, but zones of intensity of cultivation, right? So Zone 4, you might have your carefully managed woodlot. You might have your pastured pigs in it. You have less interaction. You might have trails. You might have a pond that you visit occasionally to go fish out of. Zone 5 is complete and total wilderness. It is a truly wild space. And as I've said before, not everybody has room for Zone 5 on their own property. In fact, those of us in urban areas may not even have room for a Zone 4. But today I really, really want to focus on that Zone 1 right out your door. What do you put in a Zone 1? Why is it so important? It's an area that you are traversing frequently. So in our Zone 1, what belongs there? Well, again, this is an area that you are going to visit several times a day. And really the idea behind permaculture design is that it increases our efficiency and reduces our labor. So you want to put things in Zone 1 that you need to tend to several times a day. So perhaps you have some delicate plants and pots that need to be watered and cared for. Perhaps you have something like maybe you're a little hummingbird feeder that needs to be filled every single day or multiple times a day. But also, it's not about how much you work in your Zone 1, it's how much your Zone 1 works for you. So what can you put in your Zone 1 that kind of increases the amount that you engage with the garden, increases the way that you maximize your effort in the garden. And one of the big things for me is that I try to put things directly in my path, especially in my Zone 1. Because if I'm naturally walking by something on my way to the car to leave, or on my way to take something out to the recycle, or on my way to go for my evening walk, if I'm traversing through my Zone 1, as I am moving out to perhaps engage with the world and move into a Zone 4 or 5, I am going to pause and access the things in Zone 1. I want to put them right within reach. And a great example of that is my strawberry patch. Here you can see the temporary walkway between my house and my driveway. This area used to be driveway and I turned it into more garden. Right along the pathway, I have planted all kinds of strawberries, several different varieties. This polyculture bed also has a vitex tree and many hardy geraniums and lots of herbs. But what my kids are here for is the strawberries. As they walk out of the house and go to enter into the rest of the world, they can graze on strawberries this time of year. In this part of Zone 1, I also have young plant starts, such as my basil and my cucamelons here, that I can tend to several times a day because they're directly out my front door. Here in my front yard, I have lots of strawberry patches in my garden, and also my raspberry patches. They are along paths that I'm naturally going to go by. And as I'm walking by, I won't have to expend extra energy to just pick some strawberries or raspberries on the way. I don't have to make a special trip. So when you're thinking about designing your Zone 1, it's not just what do I need to tend to frequently. It's also, if I'm already going to be making this trip, this direction, what can I put on that path that I will take advantage of? Let's let the bus pass real quick. If my berries are along my path to the road anyway, I'm going to pick them. If my berries are way out in the back of the garden, I'm going to be less likely to make a special trip out there to pick them. So think about your Zone 1 that way. Think about plunking those things in that design so that you can reduce the number of trips that you have to take out of the garden, and you increase the chances of using those things. Another example would be an herb garden. Most people put their herbs right out their front or their back door because when you're cooking your dinner, if you have to make a special trip way out to the back of the garden in order to snip some fresh basil or sage or oregano, you might decide just to skip it. But if it's easily accessible, just a couple of steps out the door, you're going to use it more often. So for me, less of my berries go to waste. Those strawberries are in an area where my kids are going to pass them. My kids are going to be much more likely to graze on strawberries as they move through the garden. So I hope that was a helpful way to think about your Zone 1. Not only what can you put in your path so that you have to make fewer trips and have less workload, but also what can you put right in the proximity of your house where you are frequently using that site so that you can gain greater benefit, greater enjoyment, greater harvests as well. Thank you for watching today. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I will be back really soon for more in my Portland, Oregon permaculture garden.